Unaware of her husband's presence, Alina Mercer stood in the glimmering lobby of the Chandler Grand Hotel, booking a room for her ex and whispering into her phone, calling him her real love. But just a few steps behind her, Julian Mercer, the husband she thought was on a business trip, watched in chilling silence, his calm expression, hiding a storm that could destroy everything she believed she controlled. She thought she was safe behind her lies, but Julian had already turned her betrayal into a trap. Why was he there that night when she believed he was gone? How long had he known she was cheating? And what exactly was he about to do that would shock her and everyone who thought they understood love, loyalty, and revenge? The Mercer home sat on a quiet stretch overlooking Lake Austin, a modern glass villa that glowed gold at sunset. From the outside, it looked like perfection. The house, the cars, the couple who seemed to have cracked the code to life. Inside, however, a silence had begun to hum beneath the beauty. Julian Mercer, 38, sat at his marble kitchen island, laptop open, sipping coffee gone cold. A man who once built firewalls for Fortune 500 companies now found himself unable to defend against something far deadlier: doubt. From the living room came Alina's laughter, bright but somehow rehearsed, as she scrolled through her phone. It had been weeks since that laughter was meant for him. He studied her reflection in the window. She wore that soft blush dress she always picked when she needed validation, the one she used to save for their anniversaries. Now she wore it for client dinners. He didn't speak. He watched. "Long day?" she asked casually, still staring at her phone. Julian closed his laptop. "Just the usual fires." "You?" "Oh, you know. Endless calls, events. My boss is driving me crazy." Her tone was light, but the glance she gave him was quick, testing, cautious. That glance told him everything. She'd already built her story. He smiled faintly, nodding, masking the storm behind his calm. "Don't let him wear you out," she chuckled, slid her phone into her bag, and kissed his cheek. Quick, perfunctory, already fading before her lips left his skin. "You're too sweet." He watched her leave for the evening meeting, and the faint scent of her perfume lingered long after her heels clicked down the marble steps. When the door shut, the silence returned. Only then did he open a new tab on his laptop and type, "How to mirror iCloud data remotely." It wasn't paranoia, it was precision. Julian had built an empire by understanding systems, how they hid, how they broke, and how to expose what lay beneath. And right now, his marriage was just another system waiting to be debugged. He poured himself another cup of coffee, but his hand trembled just slightly, the only visible evidence that the betrayal he suspected had already started to dig into his nerves. Outside, the lake shimmered, reflecting a city that never slept, a city full of people pretending their lives were perfect. Alina was one of them. And Julian? He was about to become something she never imagined, not a victim, but the architect of a revenge so calm, so methodical, that she'd never see it coming. As his phone pinged with a text from her, "Don't wait up, I'll be late." "Love you," he smiled for the first time that day. Not because he believed her, but because he finally knew where to start. Julian Mercer had always believed the worst kind of betrayal wasn't the one that shattered loudly. It was the quiet one that smiled while it cut. Over the next week, he studied every change in Alina's behavior, as if decoding a complex algorithm. She had become more polished, more distant, and more careful about her phone, but not careful enough for him. At first, he'd hoped he was wrong. But the truth never stayed hidden when technology was involved. By day, he built secure systems for corporations. By night, he turned those same skills toward the woman he once trusted most. It took only a few lines of code to mirror her iCloud activity, syncing her texts and images to his private laptop, a digital mirror, reflecting a woman he no longer recognized. The first few messages seemed harmless. "Busy today," "lunch meeting," client follow-up ran long. Then came a text that froze him mid-breath. "Dean, still thinking about you." "Alina, stop. You'll get me in trouble." "Dean, trouble's worth it. You're my real love." That phrase again, real love. Two words that turned the ground beneath him into ice. He read it twice, then 3 times, his heartbeat steady but his eyes cold. He didn't throw his laptop. He didn't scream. Instead, he clicked save and backed up every file. In Julian's world, evidence mattered more than emotion. The next day, he tested her. He mentioned a fake tech summit in San Francisco, something she'd normally insist on joining. "It's just 3 days," he said casually, watching her face. "I'll be back by Monday." Her eyes lit up for half a second, too fast, too bright. Then she caught herself. "That's great, babe. Maybe I'll finally have time to organize the guest room." He smiled. "You should. It's been a mess." That night, as they watched TV side by side, she kept glancing at her phone, screen lighting up with messages she pretended not to see. Her laughter came at random moments, her smile practiced. Julian didn't react. Instead, he silently started his second plan. An invisible calendar entry marked Operation 811. While she slept, he used his work laptop to reserve a hotel room under a fake name, one adjacent to the suite she'd soon book for her client. He checked the floor plan, the hall cameras, the access points. Every detail mattered. His calm precision made the revenge more terrifying, because it wasn't fueled by rage. It was strategy. In the morning, Alina kissed him goodbye, her perfume expensive and unfamiliar. "Text me when you land," she said sweetly. He nodded, closing the car door with the same composure as a man heading to a meeting, not a mission. As he drove away from the house, the reflection of her silhouette in the window shrank in the rearview mirror. For a moment, he remembered how deeply he had once loved her. Then the memory turned into resolve. Because love, he realized, had an expiration date and hers had already expired. Julian parked 3 blocks from the Chandler Grand and sat in the driver's seat with the engine off, breathing like a man about to perform a delicate operation. He had no desire for theatrics. The night required silence and precision. Over the past week, he dismantled his life the way he once deconstructed malware. Isolate the vulnerable vectors, seal the exits, and create a controlled environment for the exploit. He closed his eyes for a second, then unlocked his phone and began the practical work he had prepared for months. First, he protected the company. He called Mara, his COO, and the one person who had run operations as if she were part of the company's spine. "Mara," he said, voice low, "I'm stepping out for a few days. I want everything on the board's agenda locked. Transfer signing authority to you for emergency approvals." She didn't question him. They had weathered storms together. Within an hour, the legal team had drafted a temporary transfer of authority, and notifications were queued for their largest investors. This wasn't theater, it was insurance. Julian knew the optics of a CEO appearing unstable could sink more than a marriage. Next, he created the illusion of absence. A carefully timed flight booking to San Francisco, seats assigned but never used, boarding passes that would verify he'd left, emails scheduled to send updates from a business conference, and a couple of staged social posts showing a half-empty convention hall. He had always understood how narratives move people. Tonight, he needed everyone to believe the narrative that would give Amina her freedom to act. But the heart of the plan lived in the lobby of the Chandler Grand. Julian picked up his secure burner and dialed an old contact. Detective Aaron Whitfield, a man Julian had helped years ago when his firm uncovered a money laundering scheme linked to a regional bank. The favor owed was a private line to men who could move quietly. "I have something that might interest your financial crimes unit," Julian said. "If you want to see real-time evidence, meet me at the hotel." There was a pause, then a measured reply. "Bring whatever you have, but don't do anything reckless." Julian arrived at the Chandler Grand an hour before Alina's reservation would register. He checked in under an assumed name to room 811, just next to the room he knew she would book. He asked for discretion, a plausible request for a businessman used to privacy, and the receptionist, professional and courteous, provided it. He slipped a few dollars into an envelope and left it with the manager, an old-fashioned courtesy that greased the chain of small favors. He didn't need loyalty. He needed cooperation and plausible deniability. While the city hummed outside, Julian synced the hallway camera feed through the hotel's secure portal, something the manager granted under Julian's quiet insistence and the pretext of a corporate security concern. He tested his phone camera, confirmed audio recording worked, and set his laptop to stream the corridor in real time. He copied timestamps, saved logs, and sent a discreet message to Detective Whitfield with the building, current floor plan, and a single line, possible target in 45 minutes. Evidence attached. Then he sat in the muted room 811, hands folded, as if waiting out a delay. He tasted nothing, felt nothing but a cold calm. His plan wasn't built on drama. It was engineered to be undeniable. He didn't need to catch Alina in a lie. The lie would catch itself. He only needed to be in the right place, with the right proof, when the trap snapped. When the elevator chimed in the hallway below, Julian's heart rate rose by the smallest notch. A movement he had planned meticulously now approached the moment where planning would turn into consequence. He adjusted his jacket, tested the recording once more, and watched the clock. Alina arrived at the Chandler Grand that night like someone rehearsing a fantasy she intended to live. Her heels clicked a confident rhythm across the marble, her red dress hugging the shape she wanted the world to notice. She moved through the lobby with practiced ease, phone cradled against her ear, voice soft and conspiratorial. Room 812, Dean. Yes, baby. I booked it for us. My husband's out of town. I can't wait to be in your arms again, my real love. The words left her mouth like a benediction, and for a heartbeat she felt untouchable. Behind a marble column, Julian watched her exact movements as if reading code on a screen. He had placed himself just out of sight, the low hum of the lobby masking his presence. His phone was alive in his hand, recording the moment in perfect clarity. The reception desk camera, tapped by a quiet favor, streamed the corridor to his laptop. Everything was time-stamped, saved, labeled. He felt no triumph, only a cold efficiency. Evidence, not vengeance. At the desk, the receptionist, briefed earlier and visibly nervous, slid a key card across to Alina. The handoff was innocuous plastic to palm, but to Julian, it was the pivot that confirmed everything. Alina tucked the card into her clutch with a small, satisfied smile and mouthed something to Dean through the phone that was not meant for anyone's ears but his. The rotation of the revolving door signaled a new arrival. Julian's stomach tightened with a small, precise knot. Dean Holloway walked in like he owned the room, well-cut suit, a cheap but flashy cologne, an arrogance that filled the space. He moved to her with calculated charm, flowers in hand, laughter ready. He kissed her cheek the way a man claiming territory might touch a flag. Alina responded as if under a spell, laughing, leaning into him, smoothing his tie with practiced affection. Every gesture was a thread Julian had already cataloged. Julian's fingers hovered over his screen as he watched them pass into the elevator, the doors closing on the pair with a soft whisper. He didn't follow. Instead, he remained in the lobby, recording, saving, and forwarding the clips to a secure folder that Detective Whitfield would access. He texted the detective with crisp facts, time, room number, descriptions, evidence links. He didn't write a single angry word, only the data that would do the talking for him. He felt the world narrow to a point of light and file names. Outside, the city thrummed. Inside, a betrayal unfolded in frames and files. When the elevator's indicator flicked from the 8th floor to higher numbers, Julian closed his laptop with near-clinical composure. He walked to the small planter by the reception area and watched the revolving door for a moment longer, letting the scene he'd captured burn into his memory as proof rather than pain. By the time he returned to his adjacent room, he had already sent the evidence to the financial crimes contact, confirming Dean's pattern of suspicious transfers from records Julian had quietly assembled. The trap was not a single snare but a set of pins that, when pulled, would reveal a pattern no one could deny. He sat on the edge of the bed, hands folded, breathing the same slow rhythm as a surgeon waiting for incision. Julian sat in the dim light of room 811, the glow from his laptop painting a pale rectangle across his face. On the Brumanixedo screen, the hallway camera displayed a frozen frame, Alina's hand sliding the keycard into room 812. The door closed behind her, leaving only the sterile stillness of a corridor that now carried the weight of every suspicion he'd quietly fed for months. He hit play again. The footage rolled, soundless but sharp, the elevator doors opening, Dean entering with a bottle of champagne, the subtle quickening in Alina's body language as she let him in. Julian didn't flinch. He catalogued each moment with the precision of a man collecting evidence in a courtroom of one. A folder on his desktop was labeled with the date and time, ready for transfer to law enforcement. His phone vibrated once, a message from Detective Whitfield. Received files, agents nearby. We'll move when confirmed. Julian typed back. Wait 15 minutes. I'll signal. He poured himself water from the minibar but barely tasted it. The hotel's muted hum pressed against his ears, elevators, air conditioning, distant voices. Each sound felt like punctuation between heartbeats. He checked the clock. 9:47 p.m. In another world, he and Alina might have been at dinner, laughing over wine. In this one, she was laughing somewhere above him, wrapped in another man's promises. At 9:58, he triggered the second feed. An audio bug slipped into a decorative hallway light by a friendly technician earlier that day. Static, then clarity. Muffled voices, clinking glasses, the soft tremor of Alina's laughter. You're the only one who makes me feel alive, Dean, she said. Julian's too mechanical. Always calculating. He'll never find out. Julian's throat tightened, not from anger, but from a kind of deep, silent ache that belonged to men who have finally accepted the truth. He saved the audio clip, time-stamped it, and sent it to Whitfield with one word, now. Minutes later, the muffled peace of the hallway broke with heavy knocks and voices that carried authority. FBI, open the door! Julian didn't move. He watched the camera feed as the door to room 812 flew open, agents rushing inside. Dean's face twisted into disbelief, Alina's scream slicing through the speakers. It was chaos contained within the sterile order of Julian's plan. He stepped into the corridor, his calm presence an eerie counterpoint to the commotion. The lead agent glanced at him, then away. His name was already cleared through channels. Dean was cuffed, shouting about misunderstandings. Alina's mascara streaked, her voice breaking as she demanded explanations no one offered. Then her eyes found Julian. Julian, what are you doing here? She whispered. He didn't speak immediately. When he did, his voice was steady. I told you once, Alina, truth leaves a trail. You just followed yours to the end. The agents led Dean away, paperwork in hand. Alina stood trembling at the threshold, the reality of exposure dawning like cruel daylight. Julian turned, his steps deliberate, and disappeared into the elevator without another glance. The hallway smelled faintly of spilled champagne and perfume. Julian could still hear her voice echoing behind him as the elevator descended thin, panicked, pleading with agents who had no sympathy left to spare. The numbers above the door glowed, ticking downward, each one peeling away another layer of what had once been his marriage. When the doors opened onto the lobby, the air felt too bright, too ordinary for what had just broken upstairs. He crossed the marble floor with unhurried steps. The receptionist kept her eyes lowered, pretending not to know what had just erupted on the 8th floor. Outside, police lights pulsed faintly through the hotel's glass facade, a rhythm of red and blue reflected in the polished walls. Julian stepped into the night, the cool air brushing his face, the sound of sirens fading behind him. He didn't feel victorious. There was no satisfaction in precision, only the strange stillness that comes when a plan has worked exactly as designed. He walked to his car, sat for a long minute with his hands on the steering wheel, then reached for his phone. The screen showed a single unread message from Detective Whitfield. Holloway in custody. Nice work. She'll be questioned. You free to go. Free. The word tasted empty. He drove without direction, letting the city roll past in streaks of neon and shadow. Every turn brought back flashes of Alina's smile. The way she used to curl into him on quiet mornings. The way she'd once believed in what they were building. Each memory was a small sting, brief but sharp. He turned up the radio to drown the noise of thinking. By the time he reached the lake, the sky had dulled to a soft gray. He parked, stepped out, and walked down the wooden pier where they'd once celebrated their engagement. The wind was cold enough to sting his eyes, though he wasn't sure if it was that or the exhaustion. He leaned against the railing, looking out at the rippling water, phone heavy in his pocket. It buzzed again, a new message, this time from an unknown number. He opened it. "Julian, please. I need to talk. I didn't know. Please answer me." He stared at it for a long time, the text swimming before his eyes. He typed one word, "no," then deleted it. Another, "goodbye," then deleted that, too. Instead, he slid the phone back into his pocket and turned away from the water. Back in his car, he set the navigation toward home. His reflection in the windshield looked older, harder, but calmer. The phone buzzed again, but he ignored it. Somewhere behind him, Alina was sitting in a hotel room, answering questions from strangers, realizing the weight of what she'd lost. Julian didn't need to see it. He already knew how it would look. Mascara running, hands shaking, her voice cracking on his name. He had spent months imagining that sound, but now that it existed, he found no comfort in it. The truth was a sharp tool. Once used, it left clean wounds that still managed to bleed. He drove until the skyline disappeared behind him, until the only sound left was the steady pulse of the engine and the faint whisper of his own breathing, steady and precise. By morning, the story had already found its way into the news cycle. Julian woke to the soft buzz of notifications, messages from board members, reporters, even distant friends pretending to care. His phone glowed with headlines that spread faster than the truth could breathe. Texas banker, arrested in hotel sting, PR executive identified at scene. Beneath it, her name, Alina Mercer. He stared at it in silence, the letters blurring into shapes. Outside, the first light of dawn spilled across the lake, calm and indifferent. His coffee machine hummed in the background, the same familiar sound he'd heard every morning for years. Yet the world had shifted. He scrolled through the online chatter gossip threads dissecting the affair, strangers calling her names, others defending her beauty as if that excused betrayal. Screenshots of her photos circulated, clipped from social media, each caption colder than the last. She was everywhere and nowhere, a digital ghost haunted by her own choices. Julian didn't post. He didn't need to. A short, carefully worded statement had already been issued by the company's PR department. Integrity matters most when no one's watching. Our CEO, Julian Mercer, will continue leading Mercer Cyber Defense with transparency and accountability. He hadn't written those words, but he let them stand. They were the truth, even if truth had cost him more than he'd expected. His phone rang. "Mara." "Julian," she said softly. "The board's relieved you're okay. But the press is asking for a quote. Do you want me to tell them?" "Tell them nothing," he interrupted, voice calm. "The more we say, the less we mind. Control." He hung up, staring at his reflection in the kitchen window. The man looking back seemed distant, less husband, more strategist. He wondered if that was what Alina had meant when she called him mechanical. Maybe she'd mistaken composure for coldness, quiet for distance. Or maybe she had just needed someone to blame for her own emptiness. The doorbell rang. A courier stood outside, envelope in hand. Julian signed without asking, then slid it open at the counter. Inside was a copy of the police report, Dean Holloway's arrest, evidence logs, financial charges. One detail caught his eye. Anonymous tip provided crucial evidence to ongoing investigation. He smiled faintly. Not satisfaction, but closure. The machine had done its job. Later that afternoon, his assistant called from the office. "The investors are impressed," she said. "They say your composure under pressure was admirable." "Admirable," he repeated, almost to himself. He thanked her, ended the call, and let the word hang in the silence. By evening, the sun melted behind the skyline, bathing the lake in gold. Across the city, in a small rented apartment, Alina sat curled on her couch, laptop open to the same headlines he'd read hours earlier. Her phone buzzed endlessly, unknown numbers, reporters, friends who didn't sound like friends anymore. She scrolled through them all, numb, until she reached his name in her messages. No new texts, no calls. That silence was louder than any insult the internet could throw at her. It was the sound of the world moving on without her. The next 48 hours devoured what remained of Alina Mercer's reputation. What had begun as a scandal on local news bloomed into a national story, the kind morning anchors dissected with smiles that hid fascination. On every network, there were still images. The hotel's polished exterior, Dean Holloway's blurred face in handcuffs, Alina's profile caught, mid-sentence, eyes wide, lips parted in disbelief. Each loop replayed what she wished she could forget. She sat on the edge of her bed, phone buzzing across the sheets. Messages filled the screen faster than she could delete them. Co-workers asking if it was true, friends demanding explanations, distant acquaintances feeding off the chaos. Her company's HR director had called that morning formal, sympathetic, final. "We have to suspend you pending investigation." The voice on the other end didn't sound angry, just weary, like someone tired of cleaning up other people's messes. By afternoon, paparazzi had appeared outside her building. She drew the curtains shut and sank to the floor, her breath shallow. The same city that once adored her now whispered about her over cocktails. How could she do that to him? Did you see the footage? She threw away a millionaire for a banker facing charges. Across town, Julian sat in his office, blinds half open, sunlight glancing off the chrome surfaces. His assistant entered quietly, placing a tablet on his desk. "You're trending again," she murmured. The screen showed an article with the headline, "Mercer Cyber Defense CEO maintains poise amid personal scandal. Investors call it a masterclass in leadership." He scrolled through it without reaction. Beneath the professional praise lay a quiet satisfaction he refused to name. Every paragraph about his restraint became another nail sealing the coffin of her former life. His phone buzzed an unknown number. He ignored it, but the voicemail transcribed automatically. "Julian, please, I made a mistake. Can we talk?" He read it once, then hit delete. Later that evening, he drove through downtown Austin. Billboards flashed his company's new campaign, "Protect What Matters." The irony wasn't lost on him. He parked near the Riverwalk, stepped out, and leaned against the railing, the wind cool against his face. Below, the water moved slow and patient, reflecting the city lights like molten glass. For a moment, he closed his eyes and let the quiet wrap around him. At that same hour, Alina wandered through her dark apartment, the air heavy with unwashed perfume and silence. She picked up a framed photo from the shelf their wedding day. Julian's smile was steady, her own full of trust. She wanted to hate him for how cleanly he'd executed the trap, but the truth pressed harder. He hadn't shouted, hadn't cursed, hadn't even confronted her. He'd simply turned her lies into facts no one could dispute. The phone buzzed again, another reporter. She hurled it against the couch and whispered to the empty room, "You win, Julian." But across the city, Julian wasn't thinking of winning. He was thinking of the thin line between justice and cruelty, and how easily people mistook silence for peace. He turned back toward his car, the skyline behind him burning with the last orange of sunset, unaware that somewhere in that sea of lights, Alina was still staring at the ruins of everything they had built. Alina waited outside his office for almost 2 hours before she finally saw him. The morning sunlight caught on the glass panels of Mercer Cyber Defense, reflecting a man who had built an empire on control and now stood at its pinnacle, untouchable. She wore sunglasses to hide swollen eyes, and the kind of dress that once made her feel powerful, though today it only seemed like a costume borrowed from her old life. When Julian stepped out of the elevator, the hallway seemed to hold its breath. His suit was immaculate, every line precise. He froze when he saw her, but didn't speak. She rose quickly, voice trembling. Julian, please, I just need 5 minutes, that's all. He didn't answer. The security guard shifted, uncertain, until Julian finally nodded. 5 minutes, he said quietly and turned toward his office. She followed him inside, her heels clicking softly against the polished floor. The room was bright and cold. Sunlight fell across awards, framed contracts, a wall of achievements that felt like monuments to everything she had destroyed. She stood before his desk, clutching her purse like a lifeline. I never meant for it to go this far, she whispered. Dean was, he said, things that made me feel alive again. I was stupid. I was lonely. I thought you didn't care anymore. Julian leaned back in his chair, eyes steady. You thought wrong. She took a step closer. I know I messed up, but I'm begging you, please don't let this be the end. I can't live like this, Julian. I can't breathe. His voice was calm, almost detached. You should have thought about that before you called another man your real love. She flinched. Her lips parted, but no words came. Julian reached into his drawer and pulled out an envelope, thick, white, and sealed. He placed it between them. This is for you. Her shaking hands tore it open. Inside were divorce papers, clean, concise, final. But there was something else. A small USB drive with a handwritten label in his neat, deliberate script. Real love, MP4. Her throat tightened. What is this? He stood, buttoning his jacket. The truth. The one you built. The one you thought you hid. She blinked back tears. Julian, please, don't do this. I already did. He moved toward the door, but she stepped into his path. You can't just erase me like this. His eyes met hers, sharp but not cruel. I'm not erasing you, Alina. You did that yourself. I'm just giving the world a copy of what you created. Her breath caught. You wouldn't. He paused, looking at her one last time. You once told Dean you loved the thrill of secrets. Consider this my gift, the moment when all your secrets finally get their spotlight. She stood frozen as he walked past her, the door closing with a soft click that felt louder than a gunshot. Hours later, sitting in the dark of her apartment, she plugged the USB into her laptop. The video opened with the crisp resolution of a hidden camera, her smiling face at the hotel reception, her voice whispering, "My husband's out of town. My real love." She watched herself laugh, watched the door close, watched agents burst in. Then, finally, Julian's calm silhouette in the hallway, silent, unmovable. The screen faded to black. Her hands covered her mouth as sobs racked her body. She didn't see the upload progress bar moving in the background, a scheduled post already queued to an anonymous account. By the time she realized what was happening, it was too late. Within an hour, the video had 2 million views. The video swept across the internet like a storm no one could stop. Every platform, every gossip page, every trending list carried her face, her voice, her betrayal in high definition. You're my real love. The 4 words echoed endlessly through comment sections and reaction clips, turned into memes and moral lessons by people who had never met her. In his penthouse overlooking downtown Austin, Julian watched the city stretch beneath him, a web of lights reflected in glass. He stood barefoot, coffee cooling in his hand, and listened to the faint hum of traffic far below. The news cycle had already pivoted. Dean Holloway charged, the bank under investigation, speculation about what Mercer's cyber defense's next expansion would mean for the market. To the world, he was the man who handled betrayal with grace, the CEO who turned scandal into strength. But alone, he felt the weight of silence. Revenge, he'd learned, didn't roar. It settled in like fog, quiet, steady, consuming. He turned off the TV and walked to the balcony. The air smelled of rain. Across the river, billboards glowed with the company's new slogan, "Protect what matters." He almost smiled at the irony. The line had come from one of Alina's old pitches. He hadn't changed it. He wanted her to see it every time she looked up. Somewhere across the city, Alina sat in a small studio apartment whose rent she could barely afford. The walls were bare, the air heavy with the smell of old perfume and wilted flowers. Her phone vibrated endlessly with new notifications, but she couldn't bring herself to look. Every message was another reminder of the life she'd thrown away, friends blocking her, clients withdrawing, family refusing to answer. On her laptop screen, Julian's face filled a Forbes interview thumbnail. From betrayal to billionaire, Julian Mercer's path to reinvention. She hesitated, then clicked. His voice was calm, his expression composed. "I think when people show you who they are, you should believe them," he said. "And when trust is broken, the best thing you can do is move forward quietly. The world doesn't need to see your pain to know you survived." She closed the video halfway through, pressing a trembling hand over her mouth. For the first time, she realized the depth of what she had lost. Not the money, not the house, but the man who had once looked at her like she was the only thing worth protecting. Tears rolled down her face, but no one was left to see them. She whispered his name like a prayer. "Julian." Back in the penthouse, Julian poured the last of his coffee into the sink and stared out at the horizon. The storm clouds broke, revealing a strip of pale blue sky. He thought about calling her, not to forgive, not to reconcile, but to end the echo between them. Yet his hand hovered over his phone, then fell away. Some things didn't need closure. They only needed distance. He turned off the lights, the city below flickering like data streams across glass. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rumbled, not angry, just low and final. Julian walked toward his bedroom, his reflection trailing behind him in the dark windows, quieter, steadier, freer. In another part of the city, Alina watched the rain begin to fall and whispered into the silence. He never raised his voice, never struck back, but he ended my world with silence. The rain answered her softly, washing the glass clean, erasing the last of the lipstick marks that used to mean love. And as night settled over Austin, two lives that had once been one finally drifted apart, one rising in calm, the other drowning in regret, proof that sometimes the sharpest revenge is peace.